The sky above Loomis Prime burned red as the Korthak ships dropped their deadly fire from space. Yira pressed her thin blue hands against the communication panel, her large silver eyes filled with tears. The city around her was dying. Buildings that had stood for thousands of years were now nothing but smoking ruins. "Please," she whispered into the transmitter. "Someone help us." Yira was one of the last scientists alive on her world. Her people, the Vallani, had never known war. They were healers, not fighters. Their greatest invention was medicine that could fix almost any wound. Their greatest weakness was that they had no weapons to defend themselves. The Korthak Empire had come without warning 3 days ago. The insect-like aliens arrived in huge black ships that blocked out the sun. They did not want to talk. They did not want to trade. They wanted to kill every living thing on Loomis Prime for fun. Yira's trembling fingers worked the controls. She had to send a message to every corner of the galaxy. Maybe someone would care. Maybe someone would help. The Korthaks had already destroyed most of the cities. Her people were hiding in caves and underground tunnels, but the enemy would find them soon. "This is Loomis Prime in the outer spiral," Yira spoke into the transmitter. "We are under attack. The Korthak Empire is killing all of us. We have 3 days before our world falls. We offer our complete medical database to anyone who can help us. Please, we just want to live." She sent the message out to every frequency she knew. Most species in the galaxy knew about the Vallani. They bought medicine from them. They came to Vallani hospitals when they were sick, but none of them had armies. None of them were fighters. The message bounced from relay station to relay station across the stars. It reached the peaceful Zentari, who had no weapons. It reached the trading Morphex, who only cared about money. It reached dozens of civilized species who all had the same problem. They were not warriors. Most of them read the message and felt sad, but they could do nothing. The Korthak Empire was too strong. Their insect soldiers were trained killers, who enjoyed causing pain. No civilized species wanted to fight them. The signal kept traveling through space, jumping from one communication relay to another. By accident, it hit an old quantum relay that had been forgotten for decades. The relay sent the message in a new direction, toward a part of space that most aliens tried to avoid. The message entered what the galaxy called Quarantine Zone 7. This was where the humans lived. Captain Jiwan was drinking coffee on the bridge of her ship when the communication officer called out. "Captain, we're getting a distress signal." Jiwan set down her cup and walked over to the communication station. Her ship, the UES Defiance, was patrolling the edge of human space. It was boring work, but someone had to watch the borders. Humans had been locked in their own corner of the galaxy for 50 years now, ever since the Terran incident. "Play it back," Jiwan said. The bridge fell silent as Yira's desperate voice filled the air. The translator worked quickly, turning the alien words into Korean. Jiwan listened to the whole message twice. Her crew looked at her with curious faces. "Ma'am," said Lieutenant Taehyun from the navigation station, "the Vallani are those blue aliens who make the good medicine, right? My sister's life was saved by their cancer treatment." Jiwan nodded. She remembered the Vallani too. Before the quarantine, human traders sometimes visited their world. The Vallani were kind people who never hurt anyone. They were the exact opposite of the Korthaks. "Get me Fleet Admiral Minsu at Terra Command," Jiwan ordered. "Emergency channel." The main screen flickered to life, showing the weathered face of Admiral Minsu. He was sitting in his office on Earth, probably working late again. Behind him, Jiwan could see the lights of Seoul through his window. "Captain Jiwan," the Admiral said. "What's the situation?" "Sir, we just received a distress call from the Vallani homeworld. They're under attack by the Korthak Empire. 3 days until total extinction." Admiral Minsu's expression became serious. He had gray hair and tired eyes, but those eyes were sharp as a blade. "Send me the full transmission." Jiwan's communications officer sent the message to Earth. Admiral Minsu listened to it in silence. When it finished, he leaned back in his chair. "The Vallani saved my grandson's life last year," he said quietly. "Their doctors fixed a heart problem that our best surgeons couldn't touch." He paused. "And their medical database would save millions of human lives." "Sir?" Ji-won asked. For 50 years, the galaxy has kept us locked up like animals, Admiral Minsu said. They're afraid of us because we fight too hard. We're too violent for their civilized society. His voice grew stronger. But sometimes the galaxy needs someone who knows how to fight. Ji-won understood. The humans had been isolated after a war that had scared every other species in the galaxy. Humans fought differently than other aliens. They didn't surrender when things looked hopeless. They didn't stop when they were outnumbered. Other species called Earth a death world, because everything on it tried to kill everything else. Humans had evolved to be survivors, and that made them dangerous. What are your orders, sir? Ji-won asked. Send a message to all fleet commanders. Admiral Minsu said. Volunteer mission to the Loomis system. We're going to save the Volani. Sir, the Korthak Empire has hundreds of ships. We'd be going up against impossible odds. Admiral Minsu smiled for the first time in the conversation. Captain, we're humans. Impossible odds are what we do best. The transmission ended, and Ji-won turned to her crew. They were all looking at her with excited faces. Her weapons officer, Sergeant Kyungmin, was already checking his systems. Her pilot, Ensign Hana, was plotting a course to the rendezvous point. You heard the Admiral, Ji-won said. We're going to war. Within an hour, messages were flying across human space. The call went out to every ship, every station, every colony. The Volani needed help, and the humans were going to provide it. On Mars, Captain Hyunwoo received the message while his battlecruiser was getting new weapons installed. He immediately called his crew back from shore leave. We have a mission, he announced over the ship's communication system. Pack your gear. We're going to save some aliens. In the asteroid belt, Commander So-min was running stealth tests on her new destroyer when the call came in. She didn't hesitate. Her ship was designed for exactly this kind of mission, hitting enemies who didn't see them coming. On Luna Base, young Lieutenant Do-hyun was working late in the Tactical Planning Center when his computer started beeping. He read the mission, briefed 3 times, then started pulling up everything the human military knew about Korthak battle tactics. If they were going to fight insects, they needed to know how insects thought. All across human space, captains and crews made the same decision. They would answer the call. The Volani had never hurt anyone. They were healers and peaceful people. If the galaxy's most feared warriors wouldn't protect the innocent, who would? Back on Loomis Prime, Yira sat in the ruins of her laboratory, watching the alien ships burn her world. She had sent her message hours ago, but no one had answered. She was starting to lose hope. Outside, she could hear the Korthak soldiers marching through the streets. They made clicking sounds when they walked, their hard shells scraping against stone. Soon they would find her hiding place. Soon her people would be extinct. She looked at the small device in her hands. It contained everything her people had learned about medicine in 10,000 years of study. Cures for diseases that killed billions, treatments that could heal wounds in minutes. All of it would die with her. Yira closed her eyes and tried to accept her fate. The Volani had lived good lives. They had helped people across the galaxy. Maybe that was enough. She didn't know that far away in human space, the most dangerous predators in the galaxy were preparing to come to her rescue. Admiral Minsu stood in the command center of Terra Station, watching the biggest gathering of human ships in 50 years. Through the massive windows, he could see hundreds of vessels arriving from every corner of human space. They came like wolves answering a pack call. The first to arrive was Captain Hyunwoo in his battlecruiser Soul's Wrath. The ship was a monster of metal and weapons, built like a flying fortress. Hyunwoo had been fighting pirates in the outer colonies when the call came in. He dropped everything and raced to Earth. Admiral, Hyunwoo's voice came through the communication system. Soul's Wrath reporting for duty. My crew is ready to fight. Good to see you, Captain, Admiral Minsu replied. Take position with the main battle group. Next came Commander So-min in her stealth destroyer Shadow Strike. Her ship was smaller than the others, painted black as space itself. So-min had been testing new hiding technology when she got the message. Her ship could appear and disappear like a ghost. Shadow Strike in position, So-min reported. Stealth systems ready. More ships kept coming. The heavy cruiser Busan Thunder arrived with Captain Dongwoo commanding. The carrier New Seoul brought a full squadron of fighters led by Wing Commander Ji-young. Even the old veterans came out of retirement. Captain Heejin brought her ancient destroyer, its hull covered in scars from a dozen battles. In the tactical center, Lieutenant Do-hyun was working without sleep. His computer screens showed everything humans knew about the Korthak Empire. The insect aliens were brutal fighters who used fear as a weapon. They had conquered 12 star systems by making examples of anyone who resisted. "Sir," Do-hyun said to Admiral Minsu, "the Korthaks fight by overwhelming their enemies with numbers. They expect other species to surrender when they see how many ships are coming. Most civilized races give up before the real fighting starts." "What about their tactics?" the Admiral asked. "Basic swarm attacks. They rely on their ships being stronger than their enemies. They don't expect anyone to fight back with equal force." Do-hyun pulled up more data. "Sir, they've never fought humans before. They don't know what we're capable of." Admiral Minsu nodded. That was exactly what he wanted to hear. The Korthaks were bullies who picked on the weak. They had never faced predators from a death world. Across the fleet, crews were preparing for battle. On the Soul's Wrath, Captain Hyunwoo walked through his ship's corridors. His weapons officer, Major Seung-jae, was checking every gun and missile tube. His Marines were sharpening their knives and cleaning their rifles. "Captain," asked Sergeant Minjun, "what are these Korthaks like?" "Big insects that like to hurt peaceful people," Hyunwoo replied. "They think being cruel makes them strong." "Insects," Sergeant Minjun smiled. "I hate bugs." On the Shadow Strike, Commander Somin was reviewing her mission profile. Her ship was designed for surprise attacks. She would hit the enemy where they didn't expect it, then disappear before they could fight back. Her crew was small but deadly, all volunteers who had trained for exactly this kind of work. "Commander," said her weapons officer, Lieutenant Chanwoo, "how many enemy ships are we expecting?" "Intelligence says around 500, Somin replied calmly. Lieutenant Chanwoo whistled. "That's a lot of bugs. Good thing we're not fighting." "Fair," Somin said with a cold smile. The fleet kept growing. Ships came from Mars colonies, asteroid mining stations, and distant research outposts. Some were military vessels with powerful weapons. Others were converted civilian ships whose crews wanted to help. All of them had one thing in common. They were crewed by humans who refused to let innocent people die. Captain Jiwon's ship Defiance joined the main formation. She had been chosen as the liaison to the Villani because she had visited their world before the quarantine. She knew their language and their customs. Her job was to coordinate with the aliens and make sure the humans didn't accidentally hurt the people they were trying to save. "Jiwon," Admiral Minsu called her to his office. "You'll go ahead of the main fleet. Make contact with any surviving Villani and let them know help is coming." "Yes, sir," Jiwon replied. "What about the Korthaks? Avoid them if you can. If you can't avoid them, run. Your job is to gather intelligence and keep the Villani alive until we arrive." Jiwon saluted and left to prepare her ship. As she walked through the station corridors, she saw hundreds of human soldiers and sailors getting ready for battle. They were laughing and joking, but their eyes were serious. They all knew this might be their last mission. In the communication center, messages were pouring in from across human space. Families were sending their sons and daughters off to war. Veterans who were too old to fight were offering their ships and supplies. Even human colonies that had nothing to spare were sending what they could. The message that touched Admiral Minsu the most came from a small farming colony on the edge of human space. "Our children are alive because of Villani medicine," it said. "Take our transport ship. We can walk until you bring it back." By the end of the second day, the human fleet numbered over 300 ships. It was the largest human military force assembled since the Terran incident 50 years ago. Back then, humans had fought each other and nearly destroyed their own civilization. Now they were united by a single purpose: protecting the innocent. Admiral Minsu called a meeting of all ship captains. The main hangar bay of Terra Station was packed with uniformed officers. Some were young and eager for their first real battle. Others were veterans who remembered the old wars. All of them were ready to fight. "Officers of the human colonial navy," Admiral Minsu began, 50 years ago, the galaxy decided we were too dangerous to be trusted. They locked us away because we fight too hard and never give up. Today, we're going to prove them right." The officers laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. It was the laugh of predators preparing to hunt. The Korthak Empire thinks they can commit genocide because no one will stop them. They're wrong. We are going to stop them. We are going to save the Villani, and we are going to remind the galaxy why humans are feared across the stars. Captain Hyunwoo stood up. Sir, what are our rules of engagement? Simple, Admiral Minsu replied. Any Korthak ship that fires on civilians is a legitimate target. Any Korthak ship that refuses to withdraw is a legitimate target. Any Korthak ship that gets in our way is a legitimate target. What about prisoners? Asked Commander Soman. We'll accept their surrender if they offer it. But remember, the Korthaks don't take prisoners. They kill everyone. Don't expect mercy from bugs. The briefing continued for 2 hours. Plans were made, positions assigned, contingencies prepared. When it was over, the captains returned to their ships to brief their crews. Lieutenant Do Hyun stayed behind to update the Admiral on the latest intelligence. Sir, we've intercepted some Korthak communications. They know we're coming. What's their response? They're laughing at us, sir. They think 300 human ships against 500 Korthak vessels is suicide. They're calling us foolish mammals and promising to add our ships to their trophy collection. Admiral Minsu smiled grimly. Perfect. Overconfident enemies make mistakes. As the third day dawned, the human fleet was ready to leave. Captain Jiwon's ship departed first, racing ahead to reach the Villani homeworld. The rest of the fleet would follow, arriving just as the Korthak deadline expired. On Loomis Prime, the surviving Villani had no idea that help was coming. They huddled in their hiding places, listening to the sounds of destruction above. The Korthak soldiers were getting closer each hour, searching every building and cave. Yira sat in the ruins of her laboratory, still clutching the medical database. She had stopped trying to send messages. No one was going to answer. No one cared. Enough to risk fighting the Korthak Empire. She was wrong. Across the galaxy, the most dangerous predators ever born were coming to save her people. The humans were bringing war to the bugs, and the bugs had no idea what was about to hit them. Captain Jiwon's ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Loomis system and immediately went silent. The Defiance drifted like a piece of space debris while its sensors scanned for enemy ships. What Jiwon saw made her blood run cold. The Korthak fleet was massive. 500 black ships surrounded the blue-green world of Loomis Prime like a swarm of angry insects. The largest vessels were the size of small cities, bristling with weapons designed to destroy planets. Smaller ships buzzed between them like worker ants, serving their queen. Captain, whispered her sensor officer, Ensign Moonbin, they're bombarding the cities. I'm reading massive destruction across the planet's surface. Jiwon watched the tactical display as red dots marked the places where Korthak ships were dropping fire from space. Each red dot had been a Villani city full of innocent people. Most of them were dark now, burned to ash and rubble. Any signs of resistance? Jiwon asked. None, ma'am. The Villani don't have any weapons. They're completely defenseless. Jiwon felt sick. The peaceful blue aliens were being slaughtered for sport. She had traded with the Villani before the human quarantine. They were gentle people who wouldn't hurt a fly. Their only crime was being too kind to build an army. Take us closer, she ordered. Use the asteroids for cover. I want to see what we're dealing with. The Defiance crept through the outer system, hiding behind chunks of rock and metal. Jiwon's crew worked in complete silence, knowing that one wrong move would bring the entire Korthak fleet down on them. As they got closer to the planet, Jiwon could see the enemy ships more clearly. The Korthaks built their vessels to look scary, all sharp angles and spikes painted black as death. They wanted their enemies to feel afraid just from seeing them. Captain, said Communications Officer Yesul, I'm picking up Korthak military channels. Should I try to break their encryption? Do it. I want to know what these bugs are saying. Yesul worked her magic on the alien communications. After several minutes, she had cracked their basic command frequency. The bridge speakers filled with clicking, chittering sounds that the translator struggled to understand. Translation coming through now, Captain, Yesul reported. The alien voices became clear. Hive Leader Zethrix to all swarm commanders. The remaining mammals are hiding in the southern caves. Begin plasma bombardment of the entire region, another voice replied. Acknowledged, Hive Leader. Shall we preserve any for the feeding chambers? Negative. The Queen wants total extermination. Leave nothing alive. Jiwon clenched her fists. The Korthaks weren't just conquering the planet. They were having fun killing helpless civilians. These weren't soldiers fighting a war, they were monsters enjoying genocide. "Captain," Ensign Moonbin called out urgently, "I'm detecting a human distress beacon from the planet's surface." "What? That's impossible. There are no humans on Loomis Prime." "Ma'am, it's definitely a human emergency transmitter. Someone down there has our technology," Jiwan thought quickly. The only way a human device could be on the planet was if a Vellani had salvaged it from an old trading ship. They must be trying to signal for help using the only technology they knew might reach other humans. "Can you pinpoint the location?" "Yes, ma'am. It's coming from the ruins of the capital city." "Take us down. Stealth approach." The Defiance descended toward Loomis Prime, using the planet's magnetic field to mask its approach. Jiwan could see the devastation as they got closer. Beautiful crystal cities had been reduced to smoking craters. Gardens that had taken centuries to grow were now fields of ash. They landed in the ruins of what had once been a great library. The building's crystal walls were shattered, but the foundation was intact. Jiwan led a small team outside wearing environmental suits. The air was full of smoke and dust. In the distance, she could hear the sounds of Korthak's ships continuing their bombardment. They were making sure no Vellani could possibly survive in the ruins. "This way, Captain," said Sergeant Jinwoo. Following the beacon signal, they found the source of the transmission in what had been an underground laboratory. A single Vellani sat among the wreckage, her blue skin covered in dust and cuts. She was very old, with silver hair and large eyes that had seen too much death. The alien looked up when the humans entered. She didn't seem surprised to see them. She just looked tired. "You came," she said in perfect Korean. "I did not think anyone would come." "You're safe now," Jiwan said, kneeling beside the injured Vellani. "We're here to help." "I am Yira," the alien said. "I sent the message asking for help. Are there more of you?" "Many more. The entire human fleet is coming. We're going to drive the Korthaks away." Yira's eyes filled with tears. "It is too late. My people are dead. The cities are destroyed. We are extinct." "No," Jiwan said firmly. "You're alive. That means your people aren't extinct. How many Vellani are still hiding?" "Perhaps 10,000, scattered in caves and ruins across the planet. The Korthaks are hunting them like animals. In a few more hours, they will find everyone." Jiwan activated her communicator. "Defiance. This is the captain. Prepare an emergency transmission to Admiral Minsu. Priority 1. Back in space, the Korthak fleet continued its systematic destruction of the planet. On the command ship, Warlord Zethrix was enjoying the slaughter. He was a massive insect, twice the size of a human, with 4 arms ending in razor-sharp claws. His species had evolved on a world where only the strongest survived, and they believed that mercy was weakness. "Hive leader," reported one of his subordinates. "Long-range sensors are detecting approaching ships." "How many?" Zethrix asked without much interest. Other species sometimes tried to interfere with Korthak operations, but they always ran away when they saw the size of the fleet. "Approximately 300 vessels, Hive leader." Zethrix laughed, a sound like breaking glass. 300 ships against our 500? What species is foolish enough to attempt such suicide?" "Unknown, Hive leader. The ship designs are not in our database. They appear to be primitive. Contact their leader. I will give them one chance to surrender before we add their ships to our trophy collection." The communication went out across space. It reached the approaching human fleet just as Admiral Minsu's ships dropped out of hyperspace at the system's edge. The Admiral was on the bridge of his flagship, the UES Terra's Fury, when the alien transmission came in. The main screen filled with the hideous image of Warlord Zethrix. The insect alien's 4 eyes glittered with cruel amusement as he looked at the human admiral. "I am Warlord Zethrix of the Korthak Empire," the alien clicked and chittered. "You have entered a restricted system during a military operation. Withdraw immediately or face destruction." Admiral Minsu looked at the screen calmly. Behind him, his bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. Captain Hyunwoo's Soul's Wrath was taking position with the battle group. Commander Soman's stealth. Ships were already moving into attack positions, invisible to Korthak sensors. "I am Fleet Admiral Minsu of the Human Colonial Navy," he replied. "You are committing genocide against the Vellani people. Withdraw your forces immediately or face the consequences. Warlord Zethryx laughed again. Humans! I have never heard of your species. You are outnumbered 10-to-1, mammals. Surrender, now, and I will grant you quick deaths, instead of feeding you to our larvae. On the planet's surface, Yira listened to the conversation through Jiwan's communicator. She had never heard of humans fighting in space battles. Her people were peaceful, and had only read about such things in historical records. But something in Admiral Minsu's voice made her feel hope for the first time in days. Admiral, Captain. Jiwan's voice came through the communication system. I have 10,000 Vellani civilians hiding on the planet. The Korthaks are hunting them for sport. Admiral Minsu's expression hardened. Around him, his bridge crew prepared for battle. Lieutenant Do-hyun brought up tactical displays showing enemy positions. Communications officer Nari monitored Korthak, frequencies ready to jam their signals when the fighting started. Warlord Zethryx, Admiral Minsu said, this is your final warning. Withdraw your forces or face destruction. The insect alien's laughter filled the communication channel. You amuse me, mammal. Your 300 primitive ships against the might of the Korthak Empire? We have conquered 12 star systems. We have destroyed entire civilizations. What makes you think your pathetic fleet can stop us? Admiral Minsu smiled coldly. It was not a pleasant expression. Because we're humans, and humans don't know how to quit. The transmission ended. Across the human fleet, battle stations sounded. On 500 Korthak ships, warriors prepared for what they thought would be an easy victory. They had never fought humans before. They had no idea that they were about to face the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. The battle for Loomis Prime was about to begin. The first shots came from the Korthaks. Warlord Zethryx ordered his frontline ships to fire a warning barrage, expecting the humans to turn and run like every other civilized species. Instead, Admiral Minsu gave the order that would echo across the galaxy for generations. All ships, weapons free. Show them why we were quarantined. The human fleet didn't charge forward in a straight line like the Korthaks expected. Instead, they scattered like a pack of wolves, using their superior speed and maneuverability to slice through the enemy formation. Captain Hyunwoo's Soul's Wrath led the main battle group, its heavy armor and massive guns designed for close combat. Target their command ships, Hyunwoo ordered his weapons officer, Major Seungjae. Hit them hard and fast. The Soul's Wrath fired its main guns, sending streams of plasma and metal into the Korthak fleet. The enemy ships were larger and more heavily armed, but they were built for bombarding planets, not fighting other warships. They were slow and clumsy compared to the human vessels. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Do-hyun was coordinating a cyber attack from his position on Admiral Minsu's flagship. He had spent days studying Korthak technology, looking for weaknesses. What he found was that the insect aliens used simple communication systems that trusted every signal they received. Tech Specialist Nari, Do-hyun called out, initiate the virus upload. Target their navigation and weapon systems. Nari's fingers flew over her keyboard, sending malicious code into the Korthak communication network. The aliens had never encountered human computer viruses before. Their systems had no defenses against the digital weapons that human hackers had perfected over centuries of cyber warfare. One by one, Korthak ships began losing control of their weapons. Their targeting computers started firing at their own vessels. Their navigation systems sent them crashing into asteroids. The organized fleet formation fell apart as ships lost the ability to coordinate their attacks. Direct hit on enemy command cluster, reported Captain Hyunwoo. 3 capital ships destroyed. But the real surprise came from Commander Soman's stealth destroyers. Her ships had been invisible throughout the approach, using experimental human cloaking technology that the Korthaks couldn't detect. While the main fleet kept the enemy busy, Soman's vessels appeared inside the Korthak formation like ghosts materializing from thin air. All stealth units, commence attack, Soman ordered, calmly. Target their command vessels. The Shadow Strike and her sister ships opened fire at point-blank range. Their weapons were designed for surgical strikes, small but incredibly precise. They targeted the Korthak command ships' weak points, hitting engines, communication arrays, and weapon control systems. Warlord Zethryx watched in horror as his fleet began to fall apart around him. His tactical officers were chittering in panic. unable to understand how the enemy had gotten so close without being detected. "How are they doing this?" Zethryx demanded. "Where did those ships come from?" "Unknown, Hive Leader," replied his sensor operator. "Our instruments show nothing, but the attacks are definitely real. All ships concentrate fire on the human fleet," Zethryx ordered. "Use overwhelming numbers to crush them." But the Korthax discovered that overwhelming numbers didn't work against enemies who refused to fight fair. The human ships used tactics that no civilized species would attempt. They rammed enemy vessels with their reinforced hulls. They fired their weapons while their ships were critically damaged. They continued fighting even when their odds of survival were 0. Captain Heejin's ancient destroyer was surrounded by 6 Korthax ships. Her engines were dead, her weapons were failing, and her hull was breached in 12 places. Any sane captain would have surrendered. "Captain," called her first officer, "we're taking heavy damage. Should we signal surrender?" "Surrender?" Captain Heejin laughed. "I didn't come all this way to surrender to bugs." She turned to her weapons. "Officer, override the safety systems. Give me everything we've got." The old destroyer's weapons fired one last time, overloading their power systems and destroying 2 Korthax ships before exploding in a brilliant flash. Captain Heejin and her crew died as they had lived, fighting to the last breath. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human ships continued attacking even when they were outnumbered and outgunned. Their crews showed a ferocity that the Korthax had never encountered. These weren't civilized beings fighting for territory or resources. These were predators protecting their pack. "Hive Leader," one of Zethryx's subordinates reported, "we've lost over 200 ships. The humans are fighting like madness has consumed them." Zethryx couldn't understand it. In every other battle, enemies retreated when they faced heavy losses. They surrendered when the odds became impossible. But these humans seemed to get more dangerous as the battle continued. On the planet's surface, Captain Jiwon was coordinating the evacuation of Vallani civilians. Her Marines had found several groups of survivors hiding in caves and underground tunnels. The blue aliens were terrified and confused, but they trusted the humans who had come to save them. "Move quickly, but stay quiet," Sergeant Jinwoo told a group of Vallani children. "We're going to get you to safety." Yira helped translate for the younger Vallani who didn't speak human languages. She was amazed by how gentle the human soldiers were with the children, despite being warriors who had traveled across the galaxy to fight. "Your people," Yira said to Captain Jiwon. "They are fighters, yes? But they are kind to us. We fight to protect people like you," Jiwon replied. "That's what makes us different from the Korthax." Above them, the space battle continued to rage. The human fleet was taking losses, but they were giving far more than they received. Every human ship that was destroyed took several Korthax vessels with it. The mathematical advantage that the insects had counted on was disappearing. Admiral Minsu watched the tactical display from his flagship's bridge. The battle was going better than he had hoped, but it was far from over. The Korthax still had numerical superiority, and they were starting to adapt to human tactics. "Admiral," reported his tactical officer, "the enemy is regrouping. They're pulling back to form a defensive sphere around the planet." "Good," Admiral Minsu said. "That means they're scared. Scared enemies make mistakes." He was right. Warlord Zethryx was indeed scared. For the first time in his life, the Korthax commander was facing an enemy that fought harder than he did. These humans didn't follow any known military doctrine. They attacked like wild animals protecting their territory. "All remaining ships, form defensive formation around the planet," Zethryx ordered. "We will use our superior numbers to grind them down." But the humans had no intention of fighting a defensive battle. Admiral Minsu ordered his fleet to regroup for one final assault. The surviving ships formed into 3 attack groups, each led by one of his best captains. "This is it," Admiral Minsu announced to his fleet. "The bugs are cornered and desperate. They'll fight harder now, but they're still bugs. We're humans. We don't know how to lose." Captain Hyunwoo's Soul's Wrath led the first attack group. Despite heavy damage, the battlecruiser still had fight left in it. "All ships, follow my lead. We're going to ram straight through their center." Commander Soman's stealth ships prepared for one final surprise attack. Her vessels had taken damage and could no longer maintain perfect invisibility, but they could still confuse enemy sensors. "Shadow Squadron, prepare for close assault. Hit them where they don't expect it." Wing Commander Ji-young launched every remaining fighter from the carrier New Seoul. Her pilots were outnumbered 10-1, but they flew their small ships like demons, weaving between the massive Korthak vessels and striking at critical systems. The final phase of the battle was about to begin. On one side stood the remnants of the Korthak fleet, still numerous but demoralized and confused. On the other side was the human fleet, smaller now but more dangerous than ever. They were fighting for the innocent Vallani civilians hiding on the planet below. They were fighting to prove that sometimes the galaxy needed its monsters to defeat other monsters. Most importantly, they were fighting like humans, with courage, determination, and a complete refusal to accept defeat. The Korthaks were about to learn why the rest of the galaxy had kept humanity locked away for 50 years. Some species were too dangerous to be allowed to roam free among the stars. Today, that danger would be unleashed on those who deserved it most. The final assault began at dawn on Loomis Prime. Captain Hyunwoo's Soul's Wrath led the charge, its damaged hull glowing red from overheated weapons systems. Behind him came every remaining human ship, their crews knowing this would decide the battle. "All guns! Fire at will!" Hyunwoo ordered. "Don't stop shooting until every bug is dead or running." The human fleet crashed into the Korthak defensive formation like a hammer hitting glass. The insect aliens had expected a careful, civilized attack. Instead, they faced human berserkers who fought like the universe was ending. Commander Somin's stealth ships appeared in the middle of the enemy formation, their cloaking systems finally failing, but their weapons still working perfectly. The fall. Shadow Strike rammed directly into Warlord Zethrix's command ship, its reinforced hull punching through the alien vessel's armor like a spear. "This is for every innocent person you've killed," Somin said as her ship's weapons fired at point blank range into the Korthak flagship's bridge. Warlord Zethrix felt his ship shudder and die around him. Emergency lights flashed as his command center filled with smoke and sparks. Half of his officers were dead, and the other half were too injured to fight. Through the breach in his ship's hull, he could see human marines boarding his vessel. The Korthak commander tried to rally his remaining ships, but the human cyber attack had left his fleet in chaos. Ships fired on their own allies. Navigation systems sent vessels crashing into each other. Communication was impossible because human hackers controlled most of the network. "Retreat," Zethrix finally ordered. "All ships that can move, withdraw to hyperspace." But the humans weren't finished. Admiral Minsu had waited 50 years for this moment, the chance to show the galaxy that humanity deserved respect, not fear. He ordered his ships to pursue the fleeing Korthaks. "Don't let them escape," he commanded. "I want every ship that participated in this genocide to pay the price." The human fleet chased the Korthaks across the system, hunting down the survivors. Like wolves chasing rabbits. Some enemy ships managed to jump to hyperspace, but most were caught and destroyed. In 4 hours of fighting, the mighty Korthak fleet was reduced to burning wreckage. Of the 500 ships that had come to exterminate the Vallani, fewer than 50 escaped. The human fleet had lost 60 ships and thousands of brave souls, but they had won a victory that would be remembered for generations. On the planet's surface, Captain Ji-won was coordinating relief efforts. Human medical teams worked alongside surviving Vallani healers to treat the wounded. The blue aliens were amazed by human field medicine. It was crude compared to their advanced techniques, but it was effective and could be used anywhere. "Captain," called medic Seo-young, "we've found another group of survivors in the eastern caves. About 500 Vallani, mostly children." Ji-won smiled for the first time in days. Every Vallani they saved made the sacrifice worth it. These gentle people would rebuild their civilization, and humanity would help them do it. Yira approached Ji-won, carrying the precious medical database that had survived the bombardment. The old Vallani scientist looked tired but hopeful. "Captain Ji-won," Yira said, "my people owe you everything. You came when no one else would help. You fought when everyone said it was impossible." "We couldn't let innocent people die," Ji-won replied. "That's not who we are. But the galaxy fears humans. They say you are too violent, too dangerous." Ji-won looked up at the sky, where human ships were still hunting down the last Korthak stragglers. "Maybe we are dangerous, but sometimes the galaxy needs dangerous people to protect the innocent." In space, Admiral Minsu was receiving damage reports from his fleet commanders. The human losses were significant, but not crippling. More importantly, they had saved an entire species from extinction and defeated one of the galaxy's most feared military forces. "Admiral," reported Communications Officer Nari, "we're receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. News of the battle is spreading fast." "What kind of reaction are we getting?" "Mixed, sir. Some species are calling us heroes for saving the Villani. Others are saying we're more dangerous than ever. But—" Nari paused. "The Galactic Council wants to meet with you." Admiral Minsu raised an eyebrow. The Galactic Council had voted to quarantine humanity 50 years ago. They had refused all human requests for diplomatic contact since then. Now, they wanted to talk. "Tell them I'll consider it," Admiral Minsu said. "After we finish helping the Villani rebuild." The news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy faster than light. On peaceful worlds, people celebrated the salvation of the Villani. On worlds threatened by the Korthak Empire, governments quietly began reaching out to human diplomats. But the biggest change was in how other species viewed humanity. For 50 years, humans had been the monsters locked away in their corner of space. Now, they were the monsters who fought other monsters to protect the innocent. Captain Hyun-woo was in the medical bay of his damaged ship when he received a message from his home colony on Mars. His 8-year-old daughter had sent him a drawing of his ship fighting the bad bugs to save the nice aliens. At the bottom, she had written, "My daddy is a hero." Hyun-woo smiled and carefully folded the drawing. His daughter was right, not because he was brave or strong, but because he had helped save people who couldn't save themselves. 3 months. Later, the first Galactic Council delegation in 50 years arrived at Earth. They came in small ships with minimal escorts, showing respect rather than fear. The council members were nervous about meeting with humanity's leaders, but they needed allies who could fight. The meeting took place on Luna Base, neutral ground between Earth and the rest of the galaxy. Admiral Minsu represented humanity, while various alien ambassadors spoke for their species. "Admiral," said the Zentari representative, "the Council has voted to lift the quarantine on human space. We were wrong to isolate your people. You were afraid of us," Admiral Minsu said simply. "You had good reason to be. But you used that strength to protect the innocent," added the Morphex ambassador. "The Villani are alive because of human courage. Perhaps the galaxy needs guardians who are not afraid to fight." The negotiations continued for weeks. Humanity was offered full membership in the Galactic Council, along with the responsibility to help defend peaceful species from aggressive empires like the Korthaks. On Loomis Prime, reconstruction was proceeding rapidly. Human engineers worked with Villani architects to rebuild the cities, this time with defensive systems that could protect against future attacks. The two species learned from each other. Humans gained access to advanced medical technology, while Villani learned how to defend themselves. Yira had become the unofficial ambassador between the two species. She often stood in the rebuilt capital city, watching human and Villani children play together in parks that had been battle zones just months before. "Jiwon," she said to the human captain, "do you think our peoples will remain friends?" "I think we will," Jiwon replied. "We both learned something important. You learned that sometimes you need to fight to protect what you love. We learned that our strength means nothing if we don't use it to help others." The friendship between humans and Villani became a model for the new galaxy that was emerging. Other species began to see that cooperation between different peoples could create something stronger than any one species alone. Years later, when historians wrote about the Battle of Loomis Prime, they called it the moment when humanity proved it belonged among the stars. Not as conquerors or destroyers, but as guardians who would cross the galaxy to protect the innocent. The human fleet had answered a desperate SOS from aliens they had never met. In saving the Villani, they had saved themselves, proving that monsters could become heroes when they fought for the right cause. And across the galaxy, peaceful species slept a little easier knowing that somewhere in the darkness of space, human ships were patrolling the void, ready to answer the next call for help.